I have driven Carol to the airport 11 times in 24 years. I know the rhythm of it, the suitcase wheels catching on the threshold, the last-minute search for her passport in a purse she swears she organized, the radio turned low so we can talk without talking. This time was different, and I couldn't have told you why. Not at first. Just a feeling. The kind that sits low in your chest and doesn't announce itself. 14 days, I said, more to the windshield than to her. I know. She was looking at her phone. It's a big conference year, regional and national, combined. They wanted more of us there. They meant her department. More of us meant, as far as I could tell, mostly her and Mark. I'd met Mark twice, once at the holiday party, where he shook my hand a beat too long and told me Carol was the best thing that ever happened to that office. Once at a barbecue we hosted, where he brought a bottle of wine that cost more than what I'd have spent on the whole table. "You'll call me," I said. Not a question. "Every night, Daniel." She reached over and squeezed my hand on the gear shift. It should have settled something in me. It didn't. At the curb, she kissed me quick, the way you kiss someone when your mind is already somewhere else. I watched her wheel her bag through the sliding doors, watched the doors close behind her, watched them stay closed. I don't know how long I sat there, long enough that an airport officer rapped on my window and told me to circle if I wasn't picking someone up. The drive home felt longer than the drive there. 14 days. I turned the number over like a stone in my pocket, checking it for sharp edges. We'd been apart before. Her mother's illness, a college reunion, a work trip here and there. 3 days, 4 at most. Never 2 weeks. Never with a name attached to it that I couldn't stop hearing. Work husband. She'd used the phrase herself once, laughing, at a dinner with friends. "Oh, Mark's basically my work husband. He brings me coffee exactly how I like it, remembers everything, doesn't even ask." Everyone had laughed. I remembered laughing too. I didn't laugh thinking about it now. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house looked different already. Not changed, just quiet in a way it hadn't been an hour before. I sat with the engine off for a minute before I went in. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. Landed at the gate, boarding soon. "Miss you already?" I read it twice. It was warm. It was normal. It was exactly what a woman would text her husband before a work trip. So why did it feel rehearsed? I typed back, "Safe flight. Love you," and meant it, or tried to. Then I sat in the driveway a while longer, watching a plane cut its white line across the sky, wondering if it was hers, knowing it probably wasn't, watching it anyway until it was gone. The house, when I finally went in, smelled like her perfume, and nothing else. 14 days of that smell fading, a little more every day until I wouldn't be able to catch it anymore. I stood in the kitchen with my keys still in my hand. Then the doorbell rang. Renee, Carol's sister, holding a foil-covered dish and looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite name. "Carol texted me," she said. "Told me to make sure you eat something besides cereal for the next 2 weeks." I laughed, surprised, grateful for something to laugh at. "Come in," I said. "It's going to be a long 14 days. Renee's eyes held mine a moment longer than they needed to. "Longer than you think, maybe," she said. And I didn't know, not yet, whether she meant the trip or something else entirely. By the 3rd day, I'd stopped setting 2 plates. It's a small thing, but it undoes you slowly, cooking for one after 24 years of cooking for 2. I'd catch myself reaching for the 2nd mug in the morning, then putting it back. Small corrections. A house adjusting itself around an absence. Carol called most nights, like she promised. The calls were short, cheerful, a little distracted. Background noise of hotel bars and conference chatter behind her voice. "Miss you," she'd say. And I believed her, mostly. The way you believe a thing you've decided not to examine too closely. Renee came by more than I expected. The first time, I told myself it was just the casserole, just Carol asking her to check in. But she came back the next night, and the next. "You don't have to keep doing this," I said, the fourth evening, when she showed up with grocery bags instead of a dish this time. Said she'd figured I was tired of casseroles. "I know I don't have to." She set the bags on the counter, started unpacking them like she lived there, like her hands already knew where things went. "I want to. You'd do the same for me." Would I? I turned the question over while I got down 2 glasses for the wine she'd brought. 2, without thinking. I noticed it that time. We ate at the kitchen table, not the dining room, which felt too formal, too much like a table set for someone who wasn't there. Renee talked about her divorce, 18 months final now. The strange relief of it mixed with a grief she said still caught her sideways sometimes. I found myself telling her things I hadn't said to Carol in years, not because they were secrets, but because no one had asked. "You're a good listener," she said, refilling my glass before I'd noticed it was empty. "Carol's lucky." Is she? I didn't mean for it to come out as a question instead of an agreement. Renee looked at me for a second too long. "Daniel." "Forget it. Long day." I looked down at the wine, swirled it, didn't drink. She didn't forget it. She reached over, not dramatically, just a hand settling briefly over mine on the table, steadying it the way you'd steady something about to tip. "You don't have to pretend with me. I'm not Carol." I'm not Carol. The words landed somewhere I wasn't ready for them to land. I pulled my hand back, gently, and stood to clear the plates, needing something to do with my body that wasn't sitting there, feeling what I was feeling. "I should go," Renee said behind me, but she didn't move for a while. "You don't have to." I heard myself say it before I'd decided to. She stayed another hour. We didn't talk about anything important. It was, somehow, the easiest hour I'd had in days. At the door, she paused with her keys in her hand, looking at me in the porch light, in a way Carol hadn't looked at me in longer than I wanted to admit. "Same time tomorrow?" she asked, like it was nothing, like it was everything. "Same time tomorrow," I said. She left. I stood at the window and watched her taillights until they turned the corner, and then I stood there a while longer, looking at nothing, feeling something in my chest I hadn't given a name to yet, and wasn't sure I wanted to. The days folded into each other after that. Renee's visits stopped needing an excuse. No more casseroles, no more grocery bags as cover. She'd just come most evenings, and we'd sit in the kitchen or on the back porch if the weather held, talking about nothing that mattered and everything that did. I told myself it was innocent. I told myself that most nights, and believed it most nights, and on the nights I didn't believe it, I told myself it anyway. Harder. Carol's calls got shorter as the week wore on. "Long day," she'd say. "Big dinner with the regional team tonight." Once I heard a man's laugh in the background, low and easy, and she didn't explain it, and I didn't ask. It was the 11th day when the email came through. A hotel confirmation, forwarded to our shared account by mistake. The kind of thing that happens when you're booking things fast and not thinking about who else might see it. I almost deleted it without opening it. Something made me open it instead. 2 names on the reservation. 1 room. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere outside, a dog was barking at nothing. Renee found me like that when she let herself in 20 minutes later. still at the table, still staring at the screen, like it might rearrange itself into something easier to live with. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just came and stood behind my chair and put a hand on my shoulder, and I let it stay there. "You don't have to say it out loud," she said quietly. "I can see it on you. It might be nothing." I heard how thin that sounded even as I said it. "It might be." Her voice was gentle, but she didn't lie to me. "Or it might be exactly what it looks like." I turned the phone face down on the table, like that would undo it. "What am I supposed to do with that? She's my wife." "I know." Renee's hand tightened slightly on my shoulder. "And I'm not going to tell you what to feel about her. That's not my place." "Then what is your place?" I asked, not unkindly, just tired, just wanting an answer to hold on to. She was quiet a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped into something more careful. "My place is here, right now. That's all I know how to be sure of." Something passed between us in that silence. Not a decision, not yet, but the shape of one, waiting. I thought about the last 14 years and the last 14 days, and how strange it was that the same number could mean so little and so much. I thought about a wife 3 states away in a hotel room she hadn't wanted me to know about, and a sister-in-law with her hand still resting on my shoulder, like it had always belonged there. I didn't move it away. We sat like that until it got dark, and neither of us turned on the light. And somewhere in that darkness, I understood, without saying it, without deciding it, the way you understand weather changing before you feel the first drop, that something in me had already shifted. Quietly, without my permission, the way these things do. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting the room in a cold flash. "Carol, landing tomorrow night, 9:40. Can't wait to be home." Renee's hand went still on my shoulder. "Tomorrow," she said, like the word cost her something. "Tomorrow," I agreed. And neither of us moved, not for a long time, both of us watching the phone screen fade back to black between us like a held breath. Carol came through the arrivals gate glowing, sun on her skin that hadn't been there 2 weeks ago. A laugh in her voice as she hugged me that felt looser than I remembered it being when she left. "I missed you," she said into my shoulder, and I held her, and some old, stubborn part of me wanted so badly for it to be simple, for her to just be my wife, home from a trip, for the hotel confirmation to have been nothing, an error, a mix-up I'd let myself blow out of proportion in an empty house with too much time to think. "How was it?" I said. Not quite a question. "Exhausting. Good, but exhausting." She talked the whole drive home. Sessions, dinners, the team. Mark's name dropped in twice. Easy, unguarded, the way you mention a coworker and not a secret. I watched the road and said, in the right places, and felt the hotel confirmation sitting in my chest like a stone I hadn't set down. The house was lit when we pulled in. I'd forgotten Renee said she'd stop by to help me get things back in order before Carol landed. Forgotten, or hadn't let myself remember on purpose. Carol noticed the car in the driveway before we'd even parked. "Renee's here?" "She's been coming by, keeping me company." I said it plain, no more weight on it than the words themselves carried, though God knows there was more weight in me than that. Carol's face did something complicated, pleased, then not quite, like a photograph slightly out of focus. That was sweet of her. Inside, Renee had set the table. Not the kitchen table, the dining room table, the one we never used, candles lit, like she'd wanted Carol to walk into something finished, something that had continued fine without her. "Welcome home," Renee said, and hugged her sister, and it looked, from where I stood, like any two sisters hugging. Only I could see, or thought I could see, the half-second delay before Carol hugged back. We ate. Carol talked more about the conference, filling silences that weren't really silences, just spaces where something else could have been said, and wasn't. Renee was quieter than I'd seen her in 2 weeks, careful, watching, a different person than the one who'd had her hand on my shoulder in the dark 2 nights before. It was Carol who finally put her fork down and looked between the two of us, back and forth, like she was reading a sentence she couldn't quite parse. "What is it?" she said. Not sharp, just noticing. "Something's different. You two are—" She stopped, searching. "I don't know what you are, but something's different." I looked at Renee. Renee looked at her wine glass. "It's been a long 2 weeks," I said, which was true, and which was also nothing at all. Carol's eyes moved from me to her sister and back, slower this time, and something in her face closed like a door easing shut. "Why does it feel?" she said quietly, setting her napkin down like she was done pretending the dinner was still a celebration. "Like I'm the guest in my own house?" Nobody answered her. The candles burned. Somewhere down the hall, the clock in the study kept time like nothing in the room had changed at all, though all 3 of us, I think, already knew that everything had. Renee left soon after, some excuse about an early morning, gone before the dishes were cleared, and I understood it for what it was. She was giving Carol and me the room to have the conversation none of us had said out loud yet. Carol didn't wait long once the door closed. "The hotel," she said, standing at the sink with her back to me, hand still in the dishwater. "You know." Not a question. I set down the glass I was drying. "I know there was a room booked with 2 names on it. I don't know what happened in it." She turned around. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set, the way it got when she was preparing to defend something. "Nothing happened, Daniel. We talked. We had dinner. It was one room because the conference block was full, and it was late, and—" She stopped herself. "It sounds worse than it was." "Does it?" I kept my voice even, though it cost me something to do it. 14 days. A man you call your work husband. 1 room. Tell me which part of that isn't what it sounds like. That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's not. None of this has been fair, actually, now that you mention it." She flinched at that, heard the second half of the sentence, even though I hadn't said it yet. "What is that supposed to mean?" I thought about lying. I thought about letting it stay a small, private thing between me and the empty house and the woman who'd filled it. But I was tired of carrying it alone. "Renee's been here, every night, cooking, sitting with me, being present, in a way you haven't been, if I'm honest, in longer than 14 days. Carol went very still. "Present how?" "Nothing happened," I said, and heard, with some discomfort, how much it echoed what she'd just told me. "But something changed. I don't know what else to call it." "You don't know what else to call it." Carol's voice climbed. "Daniel, that's my sister. I know who she is." "Do you?" She crossed the kitchen fast, all the careful composure gone. "Because from where I'm standing, my husband spent 2 weeks getting comfortable with my sister while I was gone. And now he's standing in my kitchen acting like I'm the one who did something wrong. I never said you didn't do anything wrong. I said we both did." Carol laughed, short and disbelieving, and turned toward the hallway, toward the sound of the front door opening, because Renee, of course, had forgotten her scarf, had come back for it at exactly the wrong moment, and now stood frozen in the doorway with it in her hand. taking in the two of us, and understanding immediately what she'd walked into. "Get out," Carol said to her sister, low and shaking. "Get out of my house." Carol, 14 years I've watched you fall apart after every relationship and put yourself back together on someone else's marriage. I didn't think you'd do it to mine. That's not what this is. Renee's voice cracked on it. Then what is it? Carol turned to me instead, and for a moment I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in a long time. Not anger underneath it, but fear. "What is it, Daniel?" I didn't have an answer. Not one I was ready to give out loud, in that kitchen, with both of them looking at me like the answer belonged to them. Renee set the scarf down on the entry table, very quietly, and looked at me one last time, not asking anything, just looking. And then she left, and the door closed soft behind her, softer than it should have for how loud everything else in the house suddenly felt. Carol and I stood in the wreckage of it. 2 weeks, one room, one hand on a shoulder in the dark. "I need you to tell me the truth," she said, quiet now, all the fight gone out of her voice. "What do you want, Daniel?" I looked at the door Renee had just walked through, and then at my wife of 24 years, standing in our kitchen asking me a question I wasn't sure I had the right answer to. "I don't know yet," I said, and it was the most honest thing either of us had said all night. Carol went to her sister's, a friend's house first, then her sister's. Once enough time had passed that pride let her admit she needed somewhere to be. I didn't stop her. I'm not sure I had the right to. The house went quiet in a different way than it had those first 14 days. That silence had been waiting, for her voice on the phone, for the sound of her key in the door. This silence had nothing to wait for. It just was. I didn't call Renee. I thought about it more times than I'd admit to anyone. Phone in my hand at 11 at night. Her name sitting there like a door I could still walk through. But every time I put the phone down, here is the truth I finally sat with, alone, in that kitchen, where all of it had come apart. I had spent 14 days being seen by someone, after years of feeling like background furniture in my own marriage. That was real. It mattered. It didn't make it right. Carol called on the 9th day. "I've been thinking," she said. No preamble. The way she used to talk to me before either of us learned to soften things. About Mark. About what I let myself have with him, even if it never became that. I let myself feel wanted somewhere else because I stopped feeling like I had to work for it at home. That's on me. "I did the same thing," I said, "with your sister sitting across my kitchen table instead of you." Neither of us said anything for a while. It wasn't a comfortable silence. It was an honest one, which is a different thing. "I don't know if we come back from this the way we were," Carol said finally. "I don't think I want to, actually. The way we were is partly how we got here. Then what do we come back as?" "I don't know yet." A pause. "But I'd like to find out, if you would." I thought about Renee, about her hand on my shoulder in the dark, about the way she'd looked at me the last time she walked out that door, not asking for anything, which somehow made it harder to let go of than if she had. I thought about what it would mean to choose her instead, a version of my life where someone finally looked at me first. I let myself sit with that want, honestly, instead of pretending it away. And then I let it go. Not because it wasn't real, because building something on the wreckage of someone else's trust, Carol's, Renee's, own sense of herself, was never going to be a foundation. It would only ever be a house built on what it had cost to get there. "I'd like to find out too," I told Carol. "But it has to be true this time. Both of us. All the way down. All the way down, she agreed, and her voice broke a little on it. And for the first time in weeks, that sounded like something I could build on. Renee and I didn't speak again for a long time after that. When we finally did, months later, at a family dinner neither of us could avoid, it was careful and a little sad, and entirely appropriate to what we'd almost let ourselves become. She'd found her own steadiness by then, somewhere that wasn't borrowed from her sister's marriage. I was glad for her. I meant it. Carol and I are still working out what we are now, most days. It isn't the marriage we had before the 14 days. I'm not sure it should be. What we're building instead is slower, more honest, and harder one. The kind of thing you only get to build once you've stood in the wreckage of the easier version and decided, with clear eyes, that it's still worth it. That's the part nobody warns you about temptation. It isn't the moment you almost cross the line that changes you. It's what you choose to build afterward, out of the fact that you wanted to.